We're here to talk about literary devices. Now, literary devices are the terms that you need to know and understand when we are studying literature. Some of these will be familiar to you from middle school. Others of them will be new. We have 12 lessons that we're going to go through with literary devices, and you are to take the notes in the literature section of your notebook. Then we're going to read 10 different stories and apply these terms that we're studying from our 12 lessons. So here we go, and our first lesson is on plot. We're looking specifically at the American short story plot structure. It looks like this. Notice that it dips here, it goes all the way up to a peak, and then comes about halfway down and comes to an end. There are 5 parts of American short story plot structure. And the point of this lesson is that you learn what each of these 5 parts are. First, we have our exposition or basic situation. Next, we have rising action or complications. Then we have the climax, falling action, and the resolution. So let's look at what a basic situation or exposition is. It is the very first part of your story. This is where you learn the setting, the time and place where the story takes place. You meet all of the characters and you find out the basic situation, what's going on in the story. In the rising action, it is also known as the complication because this is where the problems start to pop up. They become apparent. And usually our characters try to solve the problem and just run into more and more difficulty and conflict. And as that happens, the tension continues to rise. Therefore, it's called the rising action. At the top of our structure, we have the climax. This is the highest point on your structural line, and it's also the highest point in the story. This is a key scene in the story. It can be tense, it can be exciting, it could be terrifying. As a reader, this is when you're just most into that story because you want to find out what's going to happen. The climax is where the reader learns the outcome of the conflict. The outcome could be positive or it could be negative. Then we have the falling action. The falling action is different for each story. It can be long and drawn out. It can be very short. It can be non-existent. It depends on the story. All the events that happen between the climax and the end of the story. It's called the falling action. Then you have the resolution, which is the absolute last part of the falling action. And sometimes the resolution is called dénouement, which is a French term meaning the end. But now all the struggles are over and we know what is going to happen to our main character. So let's review. The American short story plot looks like this. We have our line that comes up kind of almost in a triangle, but then it ends. Our 5 points are our basic situation and our exposition. In our basic situation, we find out the setting, the time and place. We meet the characters and we find out the basic situation. Then we have our rising action, also known as complications, because this is where the problems start to show up. The main characters try to solve the problem, run into more problems, try to solve those problems, run into further problems, so our tension builds up until the point of the climax, which is our key scene within the story. It could be exciting, terrifying, it could be funny, and this is where the reader finds out the outcome to the conflict. It might be positive, it might be negative. Then we have our falling action, which is all the events that happen between the climax and the resolution. It can be long in some stories, it can be short in other stories, it can be non-existent. Then our resolution is the absolute end of the story, when the outcome is for sure and we know what's going to happen to our main character. It's also called dénouement in the French. Okay, so this is our American short story structure. Now you're going to complete the form in Canvas, and then after you do that, check your own answers. See you in class.